Greetings gamers, my name is Anto, and today I want to talk to you about one word that has changed my entire approach to world building. And that word is doppelganger. Wait, that doesn't feel impressive enough? Let's try it again. And that word is doppelganger. Yeah, that feels better. This video is sponsored by Master Screen, more on them later. I've made a bunch of videos in the past talking about my world building approaches, both as a dungeon master but also as a professional world builder. So if you like what you see, make sure to hit the subscribe button, stay up to date with future videos like this. So I've talked in the past before, you can see a video up here, about my process for world building and how I like to use acronym based methods like GREAP and the unfortunately named sperm to develop areas of my world. And I've been thinking about this for a while now. I always have to use more than one of these acronyms to really cover the breadth of information that I want when I'm developing a region of my world. So I thought I'd sit down and I would make a new acronym that would cover everything that I wanted in it. Now of course these acronyms are only as good as the word you choose, and it has to be a word that's evocative and memorable and easy to communicate to someone else. And given that what I largely do is fantasy concerned, what I ended up with is doppelganger. And you can see here the little infographic that I made going over the process, and we're just going to run through this and I'm going to talk to you about how I use doppelganger to improve my world building. So the purpose of doppelganger is to give you a framework to start asking questions about your world, to start developing information about different areas and different aspects of your world to help you make something that feels more robust, more realistic, and to give you more information that you can play around with to create drama in your games. So you can see there are 12 letters in our acronym, and each one of those represents a different area of world building for you to focus on. So we're going to go through each of these and I'm going to walk you through my thought process and how I use these, and at the end I'm going to show you a worksheet that I've made that you can get for free down in the description below. So starting off, we have defense. This is everything from the defense of an entire region down to the defense and protection of a single settlement. The doppelganger method is intended for like region scale things, but you can scale it down and ask the relevant questions about a village or a town, or even really just a faction in your world. So in defense we have, does your region have a military? Is it a professional or stand-in military, or is it conscripted? Very different results based on what you answer here. How are ordinary people protected? Is it a police force, a city watch, lone marshals? What do the region's physical defenses look like? So do they have natural land formations that keep them protected? Are they protected by a coastline, or are there walls and towers and kind of bastions everywhere? Why is their defense the way it is? A lot of defensive measures get set up after a vulnerability has been exploited. So it might be that your region has a vast wall kind of crisscrossing across one side of its borders, and that's because they spent years being invaded by the horse lords to the north. Does your region have any unique or particularly noteworthy defenses? So if they have special technologies or a particularly noteworthy piece of terrain that they can defend. Think of something like Helm's Deep in Rohan. It is noteworthy for its location and what an ironclad fortress it is. Then what are the weaknesses in your region's defenses? Is it that they use conscripts who aren't as trained as professional soldiers? Is it that they have an incredibly vast planar border that is really hard to defend? And then the last question, what is the biggest threat that they could deal with? This is particularly relevant for fantasy and sci-fi based worlds. You want to think about what's the largest scale threat that they could reasonably deal with. Like if you're playing D&D 5th edition, could this region stand up to a Tarrasque? Why not? Doing this really gives you a sense of what the kind of high level power of a region's military looks like. Next we come to occultism, which is everything to do with magic, the outside planes, and everything that the normal people might think, oh, that's a bit strange. So to start with, we have, is there magic in this region, in this world? Is it accepted by the state, or is it outlawed? Do normal people know about magic, and what do they think of it? And the people who practice magic, that can get you a long way in creating some drama in terms of how common people will react to your spellcasters. Is the sale and possession of magic items controlled? Can people in the region craft magic items? This is really useful when you get to higher levels and the players are looking for particular items. If you know where the high level crafters and spellcasters are in your world, you can direct your players to them so that they have the sense of, right, we know where we need to go to be able to get this really powerful item made for us. Who can wield magic? Are there schools, or is it a more innate sorceress kind of magic spellcasting? What kind of magic or items are illegal? This is really useful for getting a sense of both how the state views magic, but also what kinds of magic are acceptable by the state. So you might find that a lot of necromancy themed items might be illegal, whereas your traditional evocation magic might be fine. What misconceptions are there about magic in the region? This might be that all spellcasters are dangerous, or that no matter who you are born with magic. Even if you go and study, you're only studying to heighten that innate sense of magical power. In my upcoming campaign for the Jewel Cities, for example, I've said that one of the most identifiable elements of a spellcaster is the spellcasting focus. Somewhat like the lightsaber of a Jedi, so that a normal person who's only ever heard of magic and has never actually seen it being performed, if they saw a spellcasting focus, they would assume that that person is a spellcaster, and that way you can get some characters who can kind of con people and beguile them. You know, some charming rogues that has got a belt filled with spellcasting focuses to make it look as if they've killed a bunch of wizards and they're a powerful warrior, where really they've just been looting them. And then finally we've got who is the most feared or revered spellcaster in the region. That really helps with some of your backstory in your world, to think about who are the great sorcerers that have come before the modern day, and then are there any notable magical creatures in the region. Now, to do this, you could just go through the monster manual and pick some, but I think it's better if you choose one particular creature to really focus in on here, and then think about how that creature is going to affect the region surrounding it. If you're enjoying this world building content, please do hit the like button. It helps to feed the YouTube algorithm and get this video in front of more people, so I really appreciate it. Next we have people. So this is everything to do with the people that live in your region. What intelligent races are there? What is the most common population in this region? What are some of the minority population? Are there any enclaves, small clusters of similar people living in one specific area? Do your populations get along? If not, why? How do the people of the region view outsiders, both national outsiders as well as planar outsiders? Is there a social class, and what does that look like? What are the traditions of the region, and what cultural beliefs do the people have in the region? This is a great way to explore some of Maslow's hierarchy of needs, to see what it is that people in this region specifically need. And then finally, how do the people of the region view community? Is community and family important in this area, or is everyone a lonely loner on a lonely road? Then we come to politics. So what's the political system of this region? Is it a democracy? Is it a totalitarian dictatorship? Is it a theocracy where it's run by the church? Are there multiple political groups, and who are they? Is the government of the region authoritarian or libertarian? Do they want to be, big government or little government? Is there any political unrest in your area? And if so, what factions or faction is causing it? How do magic and religion interact with your politics? This is something that can come up in almost every single one of these points, is how does magic interfere with the otherwise mundane? How do the common people feel about the current political climate, the ruling government, the opposition, and the entire system? How does the government of this region maintain its power? Is it through force, diplomacy, trade, something else? And then how often does your political system change? Is it a case of once in a lifetime when the monarch dies, or is it a parliamentary democracy where it changes every 4 or 5 years? Which leads us neatly into economics. So we want to think about, how does the economic system work in the region? Do they use currency? So is it coins? Or do they have just a bartering system? Or maybe you have a region that's in an area of high magic and it's some kind of magical currency, or you're in the 9 hells and everyone is using blood deals. Then you want to think about, how does this nation trade with other nations? Is there an exchange rate, or is there a universal currency? Think about whether the government is economically left or right. Are they more into public spending, or are they more fiscally conservative? And then this is a really interesting one, because it will change a lot when you really drill down into it and start thinking about it. But are the common people economically comfortable? Now, what I mean by this is, if you take your average commoner, what does their life look like from an economic standpoint? So if they were economically insecure, that means that they don't have access to a lot of disposable money, they don't have access to a lot of services, and there's a lot of knock-on effects that cause someone to be in that situation. This is if the common people are really economically secure. Thinking about the reasons why that is going to answer a lot of questions about your region, about your world, about your town, whatever it is that you're world building. Then you want to think about who controls the trade routes, how do taxes work, and also how does magic impact the economy? Because when you're a wizard and you can craft magical items and sell them for a high premium, it stands to reason that the wizards would be the ruling oligarchy class. So that's definitely something that you want to think about. This video is sponsored by MasterScreen. MasterScreen is an all-in-one world building platform that allows you to take all of the information from your world and put it into one place. It's a web-based app based on the Markdown language, so you have incredible flexibility with how you display the information about your world. You can use it to embed dice rolling commands and build entire character sheets that automatically update. It's got templates for 5th edition, and there's more systems planned through a marketplace. You can upload maps and tokens and link articles together to make it quick to navigate around your world. And it's also completely free, and you can download all of your information in the Markdown format at any time. It also has a full VTT that you can customize, add your own maps, move tokens around, and fully run combat. I'll leave a link down in the description below, linking to MasterScreen, as well as a video I've made going into more depth on the app. But thanks again to MasterScreen for sponsoring the video and supporting the channel. Next, we come on to law. So who makes the law in your region? Is it politicians? Is it a single ruler? Is it divined from the word of a god? How are they made? Are they voted on in a parliament? Are they scribed in stone tablets? Or are there giant celestial beings that stand around just decreeing laws? Then you want to think about, how are your laws enforced? Is there a court system? How does that court system work? And what happens to people that break the law, to criminals, and how are they punished? An interesting one to think about is, are there any groups that have diplomatic immunity? You can get really in-depth and really dramatic with the concept of diplomatic community. Then you want to think about, how does the law treat magic? This has come up a couple of times now, but it really is important. In a magical world, you have to think about how magic interacts with every single part of the system. Then you want to think about, are there any famous criminal groups in the region? If so, who are they? What are they famous for, and what crimes have they committed? And then, are there any unique laws in this region? Similar to defenses, this will tell you something about the history of this region. If this region is the only one that has an outright ban on the practice of sunlight magic, why is that? It could be that the ruling class are secretly vampires and they're trying to make it so they're less likely to be deposed. But asking those questions is going to give you really good insight on the backstory of this region and why these laws came into being. Next, we come to geography, which is everything physical about the world. What does this region look like? What's the climate? Are there any magical geographical elements in this region? How does the cosmology, you know, the star and the sky, impact your region? Do you have any natural wonders in this area? How does the natural geography impact architecture? So you're building houses in holes under the ground, or are you using specific kind of stone for your houses? And then how does the geography impact travel? So figuring out where some of the travel routes are, what areas of the region are going to slow things down, speed things up, can really help when it comes time to actually running the game, for figuring out how players go from point A to B and how quickly they get there. And then we have assets. This is everything that your region controls and can use to build resources or build wealth or power, anything that they control. So food, fuel, precious materials. What do they import and export? Do they have any unique technology or unique magic? Is there any particular contraband or illegal item famed in this region? And then you can start thinking about this in a geopolitical sense. Are there any assets that they are contesting with another region? Are there any assets that are still hidden to them? Or are there any assets that have been dwindled by the people of the region? And what is the impact that is having on the region as a whole and on the politics of the region? Nemesis is all about the enemies of the region. So who are the enemies of the region? If there are multiple, do they work together? How did they first become enemies? Are they in an active conflict, or is it more of a Cold War situation? What do their enemies want? What are their enemies' goals, and how do they work on achieving them? Are there any world-ending threats that you need to be aware of that might affect this and other regions? What are the region's approaches to conflict resolution? Is it always violence, or do they always try and approach it with diplomacy? And then what are some secret factions working against your region that operate in this area? Goals is all about what does this region want? What are the government's short, medium, and long-term goals? Why do they have these goals is a nebulous question, but it's really important because it starts getting you deeper into the levels of, well, what do they actually want? Is this something that the whole government wants, or is it being driven by an individual person's desire? Figuring out how they work to achieve their goals, again, through violence, diplomacy, magic, etc. Figuring out any secret goals the government of the region might have, whether the public support the goals or not, and what is standing in the way of them achieving those goals. This will give you a clear path for some conflict in your region. If you go into a region, if your players arrive into a new region, and you know what the motivation of the ruling body is, you can use that to fuel conflict and provide seeds for new adventures. Executive is all about the person at the very, very top. So who is the leader of the region? So that might be the town mayor, that might be a local baron, or that could be all the way up to an emperor or an empress. Figuring out how they came into power, but also what do they offer the people, because all leaders will claim at least to offer something to the people. So if you can figure that out, you can use that as a context clue for a lot of other information about this individual. Then you want to think about, how do they keep their power? Is it, again, violence, magic, subterfuge? What's this leader's biggest strength? That's usually going to tie into how did they come to power and what do they offer people. But it's important to think about what's their biggest strength and also what's their biggest weakness. That gives you an avenue to exploit for their enemies, or for things that you can showcase to your players that the players can exploit. What are the leader's goals? Are they the same as the region, or does the leader have different goals and agenda? And then finally, who are their opponents and who are their allies? This will help you build out this web of NPCs in court or in the ruling area of your region and start to bring some life and some color to the people in that place. And then finally we have religion. So are there gods in this world? Do they walk the earth? Are they concrete and known, or are they more abstract and elusive? What is the primary religion of this area, if there is one? How do the people in this region worship the gods? That's a great chance for you to bring in some of those cultural practices. Do the gods grant their followers magic? Is there divine magic in this world? Is it granted directly, or is it more of a, I get this power through my faith rather than as a reward from my god? How important is religion to the commoner in the day-to-day life? That's a really important question to answer in a world with gods, because it will inform a lot of other things. If religion is really important to the common people, it's going to be really important to the state if the state wants to remain in power. And then speaking of state, is there a separation between church and state, or does the church have like significant influence on the government of the region? Then are there any lost or secret or forbidden religions? This is a great way for you to develop out some ancient deities or some evil cults. And then finally, what are some notable heralds and saints? This just helps you build out the texture of your world. I've always found it really important to add some of those minor elements of religion that are stepped down from the entire deity themselves. That feels a lot more realistic than just having every single church in the land devoted to the goddess of the sun practice in exactly the same way. And that's the Doppelganger system. This acronym-based world building system is something that I've been doing for a long time, regardless, even before I put them all into a specific word. But hopefully it will help you think more deeply about your world. I'm going to leave a link to the infographic down in the description below so that you can take it and use it as a reference when you're doing your own world building. I'd love to know what other questions or information you'd like to include on a sheet like this. What's important to you, and questions do you ask when you're world building? And let me know down in the comments below. And check out this video where I talk about how I make money as a professional world builder. But until next time, happy gaming.